Right. I've got 11 a.m., so we will go ahead and get started here. Welcome everybody to our first of three Citizens Power Hours with NAFA Florida here. I am Zach Levin. I'm the chapter executive for NAFA Florida. Just going to talk about a couple of things here. Before we jump into the power that we have going on with NAFA Florida. First, March 24th through 25th, on we're going to be up in Tallahassee for our day on the Hill. We'd love to see people out there talking to representatives about issues that affect the financial services industry. So if you are able to join and able to come out to Tallahassee, we'd love to have y'all out there for that. And I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat for some more information on that front. And then I believe we have Cheryl in the crowd here to talk about our cruise that we have coming up. So Cheryl, if you want to talk about that real quick.
Certainly. My name is Cheryl Canzanella, and I am your NAFA Florida president for this year. And we are doing something special this year for our annual sales symposium. We are going to be sailing on a cruise ship July 24th through the 28th. This is going to be very unique. We're very excited about this. It's going to give us an opportunity to really get to know our fellow NAFA members, mix and mingle for 4 days. We're going to be sailing out of Tampa, and we're going to be visiting Cozumel. But the big thing is for us to be able to network and get in front of other like-minded individuals. So this is going to be really fun and exciting. It only costs it only requires a $100 deposit to secure your spot. The sooner the better. We do have some blocked room reservations. So what you see online, we may have a better rate than what's available. And I would definitely call. Zach is going to send out a link in the chat and with more information, but it's only $100 refundable deposit. And they will match any existing rates available if it is better than what we have blocked. So I would encourage you to check that out and reach out to us if you have any questions. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and your webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to the wonderful folks at Citizens to get our power hour started.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Zach, and thanks, Cheryl. And thanks for having us today. I'm Carl Rockman, Vice President of Agency and Market Services. Joining me for today's Power Hour are two of our great agency field managers. I'd like them to say hello to do a sound check. Brian Woodham, are you out there?
I am, Carl. As soon as I found that button to turn it on, there I am. Okay.
Good morning, Brian. And we've also got Christiane Chanitz. Christiane, are you out there?
Yes, good morning.
Wonderful. Brian and Christiane will be back with us in just a minute. They're going to have the bulk of the presentation today. But what I'd like to do is, before we get started, do a shout out and a little recognition to the great partnership we have with NAFA. I want to recognize two individuals who really help us from a NAFA perspective. Lee Gorodetsky, who actually sits on our Market Accountability and Advisory Committee. That's a committee that meets formally 4 times a year that gives direct feedback to citizen staff in a public forum. And Lee's a great participating member on the MAC. Also, a member of our agent roundtable who really keeps us informed on things that are impacting agents and also helps us form up different initiatives and things before they roll out. I want to recognize the great work from Eric Ponce, who's a great member of NAFA. Both Lee and Eric are valuable members of NAFA and have a direct line of sight to citizens. You can certainly connect with them if you have any issues, or connect with us, me, our field managers directly at any point in time when you have any issues with citizens. Okay. All right. On the next slide, also want to recognize our agency field manager network. Brian and Christiane are part of a network of sales professionals that we have at Citizens. A lot of you are taking advantage of our agency field managers in terms of relationship building, the things they can bring to your agency. These folks in a traditional agents or a traditional company would be marketing reps, but at Citizens, we're not looking to grow. But we are looking to make sure that your experience with Citizens is as good as it can be. So if you need advocacy, if you need support, if you need education, if you need an operational tune-up, if you need help with depopulation and clearinghouse, these folks are standing by to help you. And by the way, if they reach out to you and your agency, please take their call. Please open that email. If they're reaching out to you directly, it's probably because we want to let you in on something that might be of mutual interest to both of us in service of the policyholder. Okay, so please make sure you plug into our agency field manager network. Okay, with the power hours, we always like to take a couple of minutes and give you some perspective on what we call the road ahead. Very important, if you're coming to the power hour, what is Citizens going to be doing over the next few months that's going to impact your agency operationally and impact the policyholders we mutually serve? While January is in the rearview mirror, I want to remind everybody of a very, very significant change, and that is the flood requirement for any policy over 500,000 and above coverage A anywhere in Florida. We're already seeing some impact on this with the slowing of new business, but we'll also say that folks that had this requirement in the past that went ahead and took out the flood policy really benefited from it, particularly in Milton. Okay, so a reminder that anything 500 above, next year it's going to be 400 and above, and the year after that, anywhere in Florida, any Citizens policy will require flood. So factor that into your sales presentations, factor that into the economics for the consumer, because it does help that point of sale decision to potentially push them into or offer up a private market solution. Clearinghouse interim renewal program, Brian's going to touch on that a little bit, but then you'll also see deep on the slide, commercial lines depopulation. In February, personal lines depopulation. In March, commercial lines and personal lines depopulation. In April, in May, and in June. Depopulation is not going to slow. In fact, it is picking up momentum due to the significant improvements in the Florida marketplace. Okay, so if any of you are out there thinking that depopulation is going to slow, do not think that. We have great support from carriers. Carriers have capacity. Carriers want to deploy that capacity, and depopulation is a natural place for them to go. We are going to be introducing multi-factor authentication, perhaps this month, more than likely next month. We're going to cover that as well. But MFA, we're not the first carrier to do it, but we are the largest. And Christiane's going to cover some of that information with you. Over in April, we are going to be introducing new agent and agency agreements. Our board has approved changes to our agent agreements, and we'll be rolling those out to you with appropriate communication and education in April. Also in April, EasyLinks. And I know we're going to be talking about EasyLinks today at length, but in April, you're going to be barred from bridging over to Policy Center if you haven't gone through EasyLinks. Right now, you're able to bridge. You're sending us proof. We're going to cover some changes that are coming to the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks to make sure everyone's informed of what is going to happen, certainly in March, but also in April. And then in May, we move Policy Center to the cloud. There'll be some minor cosmetic changes to Policy Center, nothing significant, but we want to prepare you for that in May. And then in June, rates. Our rates are finally approved. We will be taking rates in personal lines and commercial lines. A lot of you have heard about a rate decrease in certain areas of the state, particularly Miami-Dade, and that is true. And we're forming up the communication and talking points to everybody right now, but we will be taking rate increases overall across the state, both in commercial and personal lines in June. Okay, so a lot going on, but pay attention to Depop and pay attention to the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks. Those are the two big things, plus MFA, that are going to be impacting you in the next couple of months. Okay. Speaking of the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks, a lot of detail on this slide. I just want to make sure everyone on the webinar today is aware of one thing. In the month of March, we're going to install what we call the last phase of the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks. And what is that last phase? That last phase is going to block your ability to bridge to Policy Center if you get premium returns that are within 20% of Citizens. This is like the old clearinghouse used to work, but we're loading in that last phase and that last feature in the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks in March. You'll notice at the bottom of the page, we're going to roll this out in phases. Okay, we're not going to launch this feature with every agency. We have currently a pilot agency that's running. Pilot agencies are running this right now. But starting March 3rd through March 6th, that'll be our first tranche of about 1,000 or so agencies that'll be brought online. Training will be available the 3rd of March for those agencies. We'll load up the feature on the 6th of March. And then you can see subsequent to that, we'll have 3 additional phases of rollout. What does the rollout mean? It means we're going to load a feature that will block you from bridging if you get returns back within 20%. We also have an override feature that the pilot agencies love right now, and we're going to show you and make you a little bit more of that. We're going to cover this briefly today, but we really encourage everyone to get into the training classes next month, where we're going to take a deep dive into phase 3 clearinghouse, and really encourage everybody to invest the time to come into that, where we can really show you how that the new system is going to behave and make sure that we have great integrity at the point of sale. Okay. Lastly, we do want to talk a little bit about agreements. Not getting into too many specifics here, but we are going to be rolling out new agreements in April. We are going to require all appointed agents and agency principals to acknowledge new agreements. We'll be doing a very robust communication plan on what changed in the agreements. And then we'll ask everybody to execute those in April to get everybody in good order. We want to get through the EasyLinks rollout in March, but obviously new agreements in April will be the next big thing, along with the MFA coming probably in March as well. Okay. All right, one last thing. I want to draw everyone's attention to a new way we are communicating to agents. In the past, if we wanted to communicate to you, we would send you a bulletin, and it would be very random, and it would come at any point in time in the day or the week. We're now consolidating our agent communication into one vehicle once a week. One vehicle once a week. So if we want to communicate a bulletin, a change, an opportunity, something of value to you and us, we're going to be sending that in a platform we call Agent Advisor. We're going to send it every Thursday. Okay, we really encourage you to look at this advisor, click on the links of interest, read the content. We're getting away from an individual email for this purpose, for that process. We want to be a lot more consistent in how we communicate and when we communicate. But we really need everyone to focus on this agent advisor coming out every Thursday. Again, it combines your bulletins, your training announcements, and also important resource reminders. Our field managers are talking to agents every day, and our call center takes thousands of calls a day. We'd like to get that information out to you if people are calling for a particular reason or need help. Those are resources, and we want to be able to push those out to everybody for the greater good. Okay. But again, this is intended to help you focus on the citizens and then move on. So every Thursday, you'll get this from us. Please pay attention to it. If you have questions on it or suggestions, please let us know via your agency field manager or get with me directly. Okay. All right. With that, I want to go and just remind everybody, we're going to pause a couple of times for Q&A throughout the presentation. We are going to take questions in the chat feature. So if you have a question you'd like to ask us on the content that we're presenting, please go ahead and throw that in chat. We'll read out some of those questions in today's webinar. We'll do our best to get back to you if we don't get to your question today, or we'll ask you to send that question to an alternate email, agent.outreach@citizensfla.com. That's another great way if you have a question on anything today that we don't get a chance to respond to live, send that question into Agent Outreach, and we will get that. And a copy of the slides will be made available to you via NAFA. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. And Brian is going to talk to us about depopulation and clearinghouse. Brian, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Good morning, everyone. We're now going to discuss recent developments in the depop and the clearinghouse area. Okay, as Carl mentioned, we will soon be introducing a new functionality for the clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks. And to recap, EasyLinks will soon determine eligibility for you. This means that you will not be able to bridge to Policy Center unless the risk is eligible for citizens, either by receiving no other offers of coverage or the premium for all offers received meets the 20% rule. In addition, we will be turning off direct access to Policy Center for writing HO3, HO6, DP1 dwelling, and DP3 dwelling policy forms. So if you're writing one of these policy forms, you will have to use EasyLinks to establish eligibility for citizens. Also, you should know that if you are a credentialed 440 licensed customer representative who services for your agency, but not set up to write new business, you will be able to quote new business in EasyLinks, but will not be able to bridge to Policy Center. A licensed agent within your agency would need to complete the bridge to Policy Center. We are aware that many of you have experienced EasyLinks providing you quotes for risks with features or conditions that you know the other carrier will not accept, okay? Because of this, we have built an override process so that a possible exception can be granted for you to bring the business to Citizens. You will learn all about this process and how to use it when you come to training next month. Next slide. As we prepare for the next phase of Clearinghouse powered by EasyLinks, there are a few things you can do to prepare. If you have not already done so, or if you need a refresher, you'll want to review the recordings of the previous webinars and participant guides. In the upcoming training in March, we will not be reviewing the information previously covered in those webinars. You may access the recordings by visiting our website as shown on the screen. When you locate the webinar recording, you can launch it in Citizens Learning Center to view it. You can also locate the participant guides from the webinars right from the page for a supplemental document for what was covered in each webinar. So a large portion of the system enhancements will work best for you without any issues if you review and validate your appointments and credentials within EasyLinks now. You will want to confirm that the administrator for your agency has entered all carriers in EasyLinks that you or all your agents that you write under have an agreement with. And check to be sure that all credentials have been entered for all carriers in EasyLinks that you or all agents you write under have an agreement. Remove any insurance carriers you no longer have active appointments with. Lastly, validate that any inactive appointments have been removed from the Department of Financial Service records. And finally, confirm that you know where and are able to access the resources on Citizens' website. We have an EasyLinks best practices guide, which is constantly being updated as we learn new information that will help agents. There is also a link to a robust EasyLinks and Citizens Resource Hub. On the Resource Hub, you will find many resources in the form of short videos, step-by-step overviews, and quick reference documents. So now that we have discussed a little about the new business process in Clearinghouse, we would like to also share some information about the Clearinghouse Interim Renewal Process, or CHIRP. We wanted to review with you today the Clearinghouse Interim Renewal Process, or CHIRP. This process has been designed to support renewal remarketing and eligibility validation efforts at the carrier level until the renewal eligibility validation can be implemented within EasyLinks at a later time. There are currently 3 participating carriers, and they will only make offers on your policy if you have an appointment with them. So, how does the process work? Let's take a look. Renewing policy information is sent to the private marketing participating carriers 65 days in advance of the policy expiration date. We will also estimate what the Citizens renewal offer would be. Any offers made by those carriers will come back, and if they are no more than 20% greater than the Citizens estimated renewal premium for comparable coverages, the policy will be non-renewed. The insured does not need to take this offer. However, they will need to be rewritten elsewhere as they will not be able to renew with Citizens. The participating carriers making offers have staged a quote in their systems, and you will be able to access any quotes offered in the carrier's portal to continue with that offer for the insured. So there are 3 participating carriers with this program at this time. They are Florida Peninsula, Edison, and Ovation. If you do not have appointments with these carriers, your policies will not be selected through this program. We are working to add more carriers as the program grows. Now, there are a few differences we would like to make sure you are aware of when it comes to the clearinghouse interim renewal process and the depopulation process. Okay, so let's quickly review some of these differences between the 2 programs. The carrier making the offer is only required to offer a renewal for 3 years on depopulation. So there is no requirement on the clearinghouse interim renewal process requiring that the carrier maintain the policy for a specified length of time. In depop, as you know, the carrier writes the risk and issues the policy upon the expiration of the Citizens policy. The agent does not need to produce a new business policy. With the clearinghouse, the agent is responsible for making sure that the policy is written and funded for the insured so that they have coverage outside of Citizens when the Citizens policy non-renews. With depop, the insured may have a choice as to which carrier they would like to write their policy upon non-renewal, or they may even have the option to opt out of the assumption altogether and remain with Citizens. Either way, to make this choice known, they need to take action and register it in the system by the deadline. There is nothing to register for the clearinghouse interim renewal process. With depop, we run assumptions throughout the year, and the insured may receive an assumption offer anytime during their policy term. With the clearinghouse renewal process, the insured will only receive an offer at the renewal of their policy term. And lastly, depop, inspections aren't needed to prove initial eligibility. However, with the clearinghouse renewal process, the carrier's new business guidelines will not be changed, and they may require inspections to be completed to prove the risk is eligible for coverage with them. I think we have another slide in there somewhere. Okay, here we go. Sorry for that. Now that we have touched a little on the differences between the new clearinghouse interim renewal process and the depop program, let's take a deeper look at the depop support we have available to you. One thing I want to point out right at the top is that this information we're about to review is available on our public website. So that means your customers will be able to access all of this information as well. So what resources do we have available? In addition to the calendars we have shared in the past, off to the right in the Learn More section, we have some great coverage documents. You will find these documents for each participating depop takeout carrier for each policy type that they assume. So on the screen, we show an example. When we click on the carrier, in this case, American Integrity, we can go direct to the carrier's website, or we can review the coverage worksheets on the left, or the coverage comparison chart on the right. I want to show you each of these documents in more detail. First, we have the coverage worksheets, which are the same ones that we mail to the insured with the offer of assumption for the policy form they have, and the carrier or carriers making them an offer. These documents will let the agent and policyholder know what coverages the policy will be assumed with and what coverages they will be able to endorse the policy with. The assuming carriers often offer more coverage than Citizens does, or the ability to purchase coverage that Citizens does not offer. Secondly, we have the coverage comparison chart. Now, this document is a chart directly comparing Citizens coverages with the carrier's coverages, including those that the policy is assumed with, as well as those that the insured can add, change, or exclude once the policy is assumed. As you can see on the document, the breakdown is by each coverage all the way through optional coverages and payment options. So we really encourage you to check these resources out, make sure that your insureds know about them, and so that they can make the most informed decision that they can. All right. So we have reviewed what you and your consumers can use to make decisions, but what about those customers who really do not understand the DPOP program as a whole? We have created 4 short consumer-facing videos. Each is less than 5 minutes long and have been created in easy to understand language. I think we're a little behind on the flow here on the slides. This is on the Understanding Citizens DPOP program. Slide 17. Okay, so these videos that we offer, one is entitled, "What is Depopulation? How was I picked?" Another is explaining the depopulation packet, registering your company choice, and depopulation process wrap-up. Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. Based on our last topic of placing risks outside of Citizens and remarketing at renewal, you might be thinking to yourself, how can I sell an alternate offer if it is not less expensive, right? We want to share with you some ways to differentiate other carriers' policies above and beyond premium when having these conversations with your customers. So on the screen, you will see several coverages not offered by Citizens that may be offered by the other carriers you are trying to sell. Some of these include animal liability, increased coverage A, C, and E limits, screened enclosure coverage, and multi-policy discounts, to name a few. Aside from coverages not offered by Citizens, there are other ways to win the business over to another carrier. Let's look at some of these programs I'm sure you are all too familiar with. Citizens is held to 3 very specific programs that other carriers are not. Here is a quick refresher of the programs and how they may impact your customers. Flood requirements. It is important to note that by 2027, flood coverage will be required for all of Citizens policyholders, regardless of dwelling location or home value. Now, while we are speaking about flood requirements, we do want to mention that flood coverage will no longer be required for contents coverage C as a condition of eligibility with Citizens. This went into effect on April 9th of last year. Number 2 is assessment potential. We are in the process of making sure all of our agents watch a short video about the assessment potential that all Citizens policyholders may face if we experience a deficit in paying policyholders' claims. Citizens policyholders are subject to the Citizens policyholder surcharge, which can be up to 15% of the policy premium, and the emergency assessment, which can be up to 10% per year, or a total assessment potential of 25%. This recently changed effective 1/1/24, so please be sure you review our assessments page to explain this properly to your insured. It is located on the public website under Insurance 101. The third factor would be non-primary residents. The Florida Office of Insurance Regulation approved an increase in the capping factor on policies for non-primary residences for new and renewal personal lines businesses. We will take a deeper dive into these requirements in a little while as well. Now, we have talked a lot about eligibility and remarketing risks. And as we know, there are other factors to bringing a risk to citizens once you determine that it is statutorily eligible. We would like to show you some of our favorite resources to help with determining if a risk is eligible or not. Okay. When it comes to depopulation, we understand that sometimes a customer is required to or chooses to be assumed. And when they get the official offer from the takeout carrier, the premium for the policy is much higher than anticipated, and the customer asks what options they have to stay with Citizens. As you know, we cannot remove a policy from an assumption. So at this point, you would need to see if you can requalify the customer back into Citizens as new business. All of the eligibility requirements we reviewed earlier in this presentation still stand. You have to prove the 20% rule is met now based on a new Citizens policy against the offer of coverage from the takeout carrier. If you are able to qualify the risk as eligible, this program to return business to Citizens does afford some flexibility when it comes to the document submission. We issued a bulletin last December with all of the details for you if you would like to reference it. We know that the policy was just with us and that we may have many of the required documents on file already. So we will allow an exception on uploading some of them to this new policy. There is a form you will need to complete and upload and link in the required document field for the documents you are submitting an exception on. The form is on the screen for reference and is linked within the bulletin. The form requires a few important pieces of information: the prior Citizens policy number, which form or forms you are waiving, and which company assumed the risk. The documents that you are able to waive as part of this exception program are photographs, 4-point inspection, roof condition documentation, and the wind loss mitigation inspection form. Okay, at this point, we'll pause for any questions you might have at this point. Then we will turn it over to Christiane. See any questions
Okay.
there?
Let's see. I think there's a few, Brian. Let's see. Okay, so if you have a 440 license, you cannot bridge and write a new policy. You must hold a 220 license. So we did answer that one in the chat, so everyone can see it. But if your 440 credential is a service only, which your agency principal or their designee would have indicated in our system when we set up your credential, then correct, you would not be able to bridge. But there are 440 roles where you can both write and bridge. So it's just going to depend on your role, and we'll talk a little bit more about roles later in the presentation as well. Let's see, Brian, if there's any more for you. Some of these have already been answered. Okay, so and this might be more for Carl, but what is the reason that the CHIRP program works so different than the depopulation program?
Yeah, it's a great question. Depop is obviously intended for carriers to come in and consume policies in bulk, but the CHIRPS program is really designed to support your remarketing requirement at renewal. The CHIRPS program is part of the Clearinghouse statute. It's part of Citizens' requirement to remarket our renewals, and we intend to run those systems in parallel. So that's the main difference. One is obviously program driven by depopulation, assigning policies in bulk to carriers. The CHIRPS program is, again, more of a renewal remarketing effort and designed to support your renewal remarketing requirements. The big thing about CHIRPS, though, is the short time frame you have on processing the non-renewal and the need to bridge, and we're going to cover that in just a minute.
Thank you. All right, Brian, what year did you say that everyone will need flood insurance by in this step down program?
Yeah, everything will
I can
be,
go back to that
everyone
slide
will
real
have to
fast.
be in place by 2027.
Perfect, thank you.
And that's January 2027.
Okay. Let's see if there's any unanswered. Okay, will there be a selection that you pick for returning to citizens that will only require the one document for exception, or would be just uploading or linking the form for exception for each required document that the exception covers? So it sounds like it's a return, when they use that form, they would link it
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
each requirement that they're waiving.
Yeah, I can handle that, Christiane. If we're talking about the
Okay.
exception process, can you hear me?
We can.
Christiane, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
So, yeah, thank you. So if I understand the question correctly, we're talking about the override process in EasyLinks. You may have multiple carriers returning multiple offers that you know are not correct or are false positives. You only need one form for all of those carriers, but you are required to submit the proof of the condition as part of that as well. Okay, so one form will handle your overrides, but we'll need the additional documentation. You'll then have to load that documentation into Policy Center later, should you proceed to bind the policy, but only one form for multiple carriers on the override process.
Thank you.
The
And
question
then
is,
in returning depopulation. Oh, sorry, Brian.
I was just going
In
to
the
say,
returning
go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, I think there's a little bit of delay. I apologize. There is another question regarding returning depopulation. Brian, if the documents that are being waived are expired, do we still submit the form?
No, they have to be current. So yeah, they would still have to get those if, let's say, the WLM has to be 5 years or less, and the 4-point has to be within the year. I was just,
Correct. And that is, yeah, that is our new business rule. If though they were assumed through our depopulation program and went to another carrier and they're using the waiver form to come back for the soft landing, if the inspections are expired, that is fine. That's, you know, we're not asking them to go out and get new inspections. That's part of the program. So you would use the
you're
form
correct.
and link it to each one that you're using the form for. So if you're using it for
Yeah.
both the 4-point and the win-loss, you'd link it in both places.
Correct. I was going to answer a question about the X-wind in terms of the flood. You don't need it if you have a policy that is excluding that peril. Okay. So this is only for those policies that include the peril of wind.
Good distinction. Okay, so there's a question. Will all billing and all renewal and things that we normally get on the desktop still show on Citizens website?
I think the answer to that, Christiane, would be yes. We might have triggered someone that saw us loading Policy Center into the cloud. Nothing about moving Policy Center to the cloud is going to change the functionality you currently have, and we're hoping to make some improvements once we get into the cloud. So hopefully that addressed that question, but no plans to change the activity queue that you currently have on your desktop.
Very good. Okay. Okay, there's another question on returning depopulation, Brian. For moving the insured back to Citizens, if the offer was too high, does it have to be right away to complete document exception form and waive some documents required? Or if they were to come back to Citizens after a year, does the document waiver still apply? That's a good question.
I believe that has to be done within short order. You're not going to be able to wait for that.
Correct.
That's
Correct, Brian. Yeah,
correct.
the returning depop only applies to that first opportunity at that first actual renewal. It does not extend to year 2 and year 3.
Correct.
Okay. Another question regarding returning depopulation. If we are rewriting somebody back through citizens due to an increase in the assumed policy, but the House did not need a 4-point inspection when the first citizens policy was written, are we still able to use the exception form to avoid needing a 4-point to return to citizens?
Yes.
So now it needs one.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Brian got the X-Wind question. Let's see. Are current citizens policies that require flood having to prove flood coverage? Are they having to prove flood coverage on every renewal
No,
or just the one
just
time?
the one time.
Thank you. There's a few questions on X-Wind, a few questions on easy links in the override form that we didn't really cover in this presentation. I think it's going would really benefit to coming to our trainings next month because it's going to go in a lot of detail on the override form and exactly when to use it, exactly how it works, exactly how to make citizens become eligible should you be in that situation. All right, and I think we're okay to move on, and we'll pause again for more questions toward the end.
Very good. Turn it over to you, Christiane.
Thank you, Brian. All right. So Brian did share a lot with you about depopulation. So I wanted to remind you that when it comes to knowing when things are happening with your policies at Citizens, we send notices to agents via both Policy Center desktop activity and there's another way that we want to just remind you of if you're not, or let you know if you're not already aware. So not everything is included in activities. One of those things is when an assumed policy is removed from an assumption. So the best way for an agent to receive notice when this happens is we recommend you sign up for a daily email from Policy Center that tells you anytime a document is generated to the insured. So this includes, but is not limited to, renewals, invoices, cancellations, policy changes, and then, as mentioned, when a policy is removed from an assumption. Among many other documents that we send insureds would all show up on this email to you daily. So the daily email is linked to the agent of record's user credentials. So if you are the agent of record for the policy, the daily email would be coming to you. If you haven't set this up already, we highly encourage you to do so. And it's pretty simple. What you would do is you would log into Policy Center using your username and password. When you are logged in and inside Policy Center, there's a little gear icon in the upper right-hand corner. You would select that and it gives you a drop-down menu. From that drop-down menu, select Preferences. When the Preferences menu pops up, there's a little question in there. It's right at the top. It says send email notification to me when a document is generated. And you want to toggle that to yes. Select update, and then it will go overnight, and the next day you should receive your first email notification if your policies had anything generated on them. If you have maybe a smaller book of business and nothing was generated on a particular day, you would not receive this email. You would only receive this email if something does generate. And let me show you really quickly what this email looks like if you do elect to sign up for it. So this is an example of the daily email you would receive if you sign up. It includes the policy number, the policyholder's name, and the type of document that was generated. As you can see, you might be able to use this email to understand which policies you need to take action on for one reason or another, if it's cancellation, not renewal, payment due, a depopulation situation, and many other reasons that you might want to. All right. So as Carl announced earlier, we are moving to a multi-factor authentication process for Policy Center. We kind of want to let you know what the experience will be like once we're there living in this multi-factor authentication. So what will happen is once this is live, you will log into citizensfla.com with your existing username and password, the one you used today. And that's our main website. And then when you go to this My Systems dropdown and access Policy Center, you'll get your normal, a login screen for Policy Center. It might look a little bit different. And it's going to ask you to log in with different credentials. Your email address that is associated with your My Agency account will be your new username. You will then need to create a new password upon your first login. You'll create a new password. And then additionally, each time that you log into Policy Center, you will be emailed to that same email address that is your username, a code to enter on the login screen. Now, an important reminder is that the email address you have associated with your Citizens account should be unique to you and readily accessible by you so that you'll be able to access that code and be able to plug it in. And then once you put your credentials in, authenticate your account with the code, you will be in Policy Center. So that's just a little bit of how it's going to work in the future. Now we do have a couple of reminders for you as we move toward the multi-factor authentication. As you should already know, credential sharing is not permitted at Citizens. So if you work on Citizens business, you should have your own credential to access our systems with. If you do not currently have your own credential, then you would want to speak with your agency principal or their designee to obtain one. And then secondly, as we discussed on the last slide, your email address is super important and needs to be easily accessible. If you're unsure what email address we have on file for you, or if you think it might need to be updated or does need to be updated, then we ask that you please work with your agency principal or their designee to verify or make sure those changes are made in My Agency for you. Now, if you have any trouble once this goes live, if you have any trouble logging in for the first time, or maybe you did set up your new password and you forgot your password, we have created a simple yet pretty effective guide to walk you through the process. Keep in mind that the new login system is completely self-service. And when it comes to Policy Center access, Citizen staff can no longer reset your password for you. So this guide will need to be followed to gain access if you do forget your password or get locked out. And where can you find this guide? We do have it linked in any bulletin that we've sent or will send on the multi-factor authentication. It's linked in the bulletins, but it's also out on our website at citizensfla.com on the training tab in the personal job aid section under basics, and it's called My Identity Agent System Access Guide. Now, as Carl also mentioned earlier in the road ahead, we are going to be introducing new agent agreements this year. These new agreements are going to include additional emphasis on the customer relationship and experience. We do have, you may have seen it, maybe not, but we do have a policyholder declaration of rights, like you see on the screen, that is available on our website right now. It is part of our plan of operation. We have a commitment to our policyholders that they receive quality customer service and are treated with the utmost respect, courtesy, and professionalism. Within this declaration is a section describing what Citizens implements through our appointed agents. We commit to train our agents so that they can be most knowledgeable in our products, services, and processes to best serve our mutual customers. We do also audit our agents' performance, and if violations are discovered, we provide notice, education, and appropriate discipline to ensure agents are performing according to these guidelines. So just to keep that in mind, more on that. Now, did you know also that every time one of our mutual policyholders calls Citizens directly, we offer them the opportunity to complete a satisfaction survey? The survey we call Voice of the Customer. It is one way that we monitor the customer's experience and live into the policyholder declarations of rights. We ask the policyholders who choose to participate a series of questions about their satisfaction with Citizens as a whole. The survey allows us to understand where we are as a company, can improve our interactions with customers, and pick up on policy and procedure updates that might benefit them. As part of this survey, we also ask the policyholder one very important question about their agent. The question is, in regard to your level of satisfaction with Citizens as an organization, please rate the service provided by your agent. This question is applied on a score on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 is being very dissatisfied, 5 being very satisfied. And when the policyholder does choose a score of 1, 2, or 3, we offer them the opportunity to tell us why, and we capture their reasoning verbatim. All of these survey results are captured, aggregated, and then rolled up by the agency level. And just to give you an idea of how the question regarding the insured's level of satisfaction with the service provided by their citizens agent has looked over the past 2 years, here's how we look at it as a whole. We do track the number of calls we receive from policyholders, as well as the number of surveys that were completed. And then finally, the average satisfaction score among all of our agents is captured. And as you can see on the charts, the scores have held pretty steady, and we've ended up with an overall satisfaction score of 84.4% last year. As mentioned before, we're constantly looking for ways to help agents improve in this space, and we'll continue to give this survey a lot of attention as we move through 2025. Now, like I said, it does roll up to the agency. So if you would like to see your agency's individual results from this survey, then we ask you to please reach out to your agency field manager, and we'll show you a picture of that map again at the end. Now, also in the customer experience space here at Citizens, we feel that by offering customers My Policy, which is a self-service portal, we mutually be helping them stay connected with their homeowner's insurance policy and provide them the ability to access important documents, make payments, file claims, view their details. Having a registered My Policy account will also be helpful during hurricane season, as customers will have direct access to their policy documents and information right on their phone at a time when it's likely hard to find documents in a hurry. In addition to this online portal for the customers, we also have an option for them to opt out of receiving many of the policy docs via mail. If they opt into paperless delivery of documents, we will email them when a document is available in my agency, and then they can just log in and access the documents that they'd like to take a look at. Might also be wondering what the adoption rate is on this as well, which we do have. For 22% of the entire Citizen book of business is fully registered for a My Policy account. And then similarly, 23% of those who have a fully registered My Policy account have opted into the paperless delivery of documents. So we would, of course, like to see these numbers grow and appreciate all the work that you're already doing to make customers aware of this portal and help them sign up for paperless delivery of their documents should they choose to. And again, if you are curious about how your agency is performing in this space at the end of this presentation, Carl will show that field management map if you don't already know who yours is. You can reach out to your assigned field manager and they can provide you with the adoption numbers for your agency's book of business for both My Policy registration as well as the paperless adoption. All right. So if you are an agency leader, we're going to transition into going over some My Agency credentialing, as well as overall agency management information. If you're not an agency principal or a designee, you may want to stick around just to see what some of the stuff is that is available. However, just feel free to stay on the call for the next few minutes for this part too. All right. So we have mentioned a few times throughout this presentation that agent record changes, so like your email, your phone number, things like that, would need to be made in My Agency by your agency principal or their designee. So we want to show you what other changes can be made in My Agency and talk about how to make those changes. So agency, several things that can be done to manage these records with citizens. There's a specific request option. There is a specific request option for the change you're attempting to make. We encourage you to use the appropriate request type for the change you're making. There's a general inquiry option, just in case we didn't capture what it is you're trying to either ask us or accomplish in the system, but it should be reserved for those requests that you didn't have another way of submitting. So what are some of those requests that have a very specific request option in My Agency? Add or changing the agency principal or the agency principal designee. So the agency principal can have several designees. Those are unlimited. So as many as are needed, they can go ahead and submit them right through the system. There's a very specific request for that. If you need to update your agency phone number or your overall agency email address, there's a way to do that. E&O. As your E&O renews or changes, you can submit those changes to us directly right through the system. If your agency name changes or you have a DBA that you'd like to add, there's a specific option for that. If you've purchased a book of business or are merging with another agency, there are specific requests in the system for buying, selling, or transferring books of business. If you have a specific policy commission inquiry, you may submit that using the agency commission inquiry request. To have your commissions paid to you electronically, you would need to complete an electronic payment information update, and this will allow you to enter and certify your bank account information. Additionally, there's also an option in there for you to change or remove a previously set up electronic payment account. If you acquire another agency or are growing and expanding, there's an option to add or remove additional agency locations. Similarly, if you have staffing changes, you will add or remove staff using a request in my agency. We also mentioned earlier that as we move to multi-factor authentication, everyone's email addresses need to be correct in my agency. There's a specific request option to update this information as well. And this is one of the requests that is approved instantly once submitted. So as long as the email address is not the same as someone else's, this will be one of those requests you put through the system and it updates right then. And that's going to be super helpful when it comes to everybody getting logged in and their new credentials for the multi-factor authentication. Transferring staff to a new location. You may also have some staff moving around among your already existing locations. And if that's the case, there's a request specific to moving staff from one location to another. And then finally, if you have an agent who was only writing one line of authority, or maybe they no longer write one or lost an appointment and can no longer write that line with Citizens, you may submit to modify lines of authority. Importantly, you probably want to know how long does it take for those requests that are not processed instantly. On average, our service agreement is 15 business days. So we do ask you to please plan accordingly and allow time for processing. And then you can find instructions if you are the agency principal or one of their designees. You can find instruction on how to submit all of these requests and more in the My Agency User Guide for agency principals and their designee located on our agent portal on My Agency. Okay. And lastly, and we've discussed this before, but we want to stress the importance and requirement that every member of your agency staff that touches citizens' business in some way should have a citizen's credential. Based on privacy laws, we need to make sure that we are only speaking with individuals who have the proper authorization to discuss specific policy information with. So we have the following options for credentials available. We have a full agent credential, which is a full agent with a 220 license or equivalent, will be the agent of record of their own book of business. Then we also have a limited agent. They're also 220 or equivalent licensed, but they write up under one of those full agents. They're not writing their own book of business, but they're writing new business under somebody else. And we also have, this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, the 2 licensed customer representative roles. These are typically the 440 licensed agent representatives who either are going to write new business and service business, or they might be in that role just to service business. And that's going to depend on how you are set up within my agency. But there are 2 separate licensed customer representative roles. It just depends on what it is you would like to do in the system or what your management designates. And then lastly, there is a view-only support staff role. These are typically unlicensed staff who need a view-only role to view existing business, policy statuses, maybe has a need to contact citizens on behalf of the agent or licensed customer representative. So there is a way for them to have their own credential to get into a view-only role in our system as well. And then also, as a reminder, if anyone on your staff needs an EasyLinks credential to quote for new business, they will also need to have a citizen's credential first. So make sure all staff who are quoting citizens business is credentialed in my agency according to the rules that we just discussed. And then again, if somebody's role needs to change, maybe they're in a role that's not serving their purpose any longer and they need to change it, that can all be done in my agency by the agency principal or their designee, and the guide includes the step-by-step process for that as well. And since we've reviewed all the different types of roles we offer here at Citizens. We don't expect you to remember all of that, so we have enhanced our My Agency system, as you see on the screen. When you proceed to add a new user to your agency, you will be provided with definitions of each role, what their appointment requirements are, and asked to answer some basic questions up front to help you with the ease of adding a new user. And we hope that this will help make the process a little smoother. With that,
Okay.
we are
Great job,
at-
Christine.
we're at
Thank you. We're
time.
right at the we're right at the top of the hour. We are getting some additional questions. If we didn't get a chance to get back to you both live or in the chat on Zoom, feel free to send your questions either into your agency field manager or to agent.outreach. If you want to put the question slide up, Christiane, those questions can also come into agent.outreach@citizensfla.com. Either method to get your question in, we'll do our best to get back with you. I will say this, I really encourage everyone to come to the training we're going to be doing in March. Those classes are actually out there on our education portal. A lot of the questions that you have on RCE and a lot of the questions you have on EasyLinks, we are going to address in detail in that training session, okay? So I would just encourage all of you to come. I think you'll be pleased with what you see, and we actually have some additional enhancements and things coming to EasyLinks that we'll be talking about. So really encourage everyone to come to that. We'll do our best to get back with you on your individual questions regarding that based on the emails you send in, okay? With that, Zach, we'd like to thank NAIFA Florida for having us today. And we look forward to having everybody at an upcoming Power Hour. We hope to see you at upcoming NAIFA events in the future. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. And just before y'all leave, a copy of the slides and a recording of the meeting will be sent out to everybody post-meeting. Thanks, everybody.